Hello, everyone. Welcome to the third segment in our series of virtual learning labs with Vera Solutions. We've had very insightful discussions in the last two sessions with Shama Sinha. Shama is a solutions engineer at Vera Solutions. Together, we've explored the factors that organizations should consider while choosing tech solutions and the ways in which they can prepare themselves before adopting these solutions. In this final session today, we will explore the risks and complexities that are associated with the adoption of tech solutions and the ways in which we could try and mitigate them. Thank you again for joining us today, Shama. So, Shama, we know that nonprofits possess a variety of data that they may want to manage through tech solutions. This includes program data, beneficiary data, financial data, all sorts of data. And this could be sensitive data as well as data that is used to drive crucial program decisions. So, Shah, my first question is, we've discussed the criteria that organizations should use to select a tech solution and what steps they should follow to have internal preparedness. Are there any potential risks and complexities that organizations should consider while adopting tech solutions as well?
Great, thanks for the question, Mimansa. I think when we are talking of adoption of tech solutions in general, the two main that come to my mind are challenges or complexities related to change management, and like you said, a lot around data management. We have covered a lot about, we have spoken a lot about change management in the last couple of sessions, so I'll probably not elaborate on that further, but just want to remind that that's something to keep in mind primarily. The second one, like you pointed out, is definitely data management. There are a lot of complexities and risks that organizations must keep into consideration when it comes to data management. We've noticed that most of the issues that are data related that are common among organizations is because of ungoverned data management practices. So it's really important to have good data governance and to ensure that your data quality is high. That will always be an important issue. And just to sort of give an example of what bad quality data looks like, it could be incomplete, which means you might be missing some really important information, or it could be inaccurate, which is to say, you're probably filling the incorrect information in a different field, or maybe you have some spelling mistakes or some typos. And then, of course, inconsistency is very common. A lot of organizations, for example, if you have to enter country data in two places, in one place it might be called as USA, in another place it's probably called United States of America. That is a very common example of inconsistent data. And of course, redundancy. So if you're entering data in multiple places again, maybe you're entering the same organization name in two different ways. Maybe it's the full name in one place and an abbreviation in second place. And these are some really common examples of data quality issues. And that's something that organizations really need to pay attention to, especially when they are bringing on a tech solution. So I think before they adopt a technology solution or implementation, the first step is maybe make sure that you have some governance strategy set in place for your data. And then, of course, data privacy is another big risk to be considered, very important, especially when you are selecting any kind of tool for data management. And beyond that, data security as well. So if you are having to adopt a new tool, you have to make sure that the tool either follows standard security protocols or can be configured in such a way that you as an organization can follow security protocols that will protect your data once it is in the system. So I think at a high level, of course, change management and data management are probably two very key aspects to keep in mind. Beyond that, of course, depending on organization, technology adoption could have other complexities like language barriers, hardware issues, internet issues. There could be so many. But I think these two are really key and something that we have very commonly seen across organizations.
Right. Thank you for that, Shama. And so to summarize, there's definitely, change management on one hand, and on the other hand, we have things like data quality, data privacy, data security. Okay. So, Sham, what can organizations do to sort of prevent, mitigate, or address some of these challenges and risks? Are there any recommendations you can offer?
Yeah, just based on our experience, again, with change management, probably similar to what I've already said multiple times. Make sure you have a strategy, plan for adequate training, adjust your current systems and process if required. So happy to chat more about what change management mitigation strategies we can have. When it comes to data management, I think there are a few things that organizations can consider. First, I would say is centralization of data. So maybe adopting a CRM system or maybe adopting a database system. I think given the benefits that nicely stored data in a central location brings to an organization, it's very surprising that very few organizations have actually started adopting a system like that. There are a lot of benefits, and probably worth it's time for a lot of organizations to start considering adopting a CRM system that they will frequently update. They should update that, keep it clean, and if required, integrate it with other tools that they are maybe using for other functions. So I think that's one, centralizing your data. Another would be to make sure that you're not creating copies of the same data. And if you are using Excel, there's a huge chance that you will run into the risk of having several versions of the Excel. So I think what I've noticed is it's always helpful to keep your data and your analysis also in one place, as an example. So if you are similar, tying back to my previous point, if you are using a CRM system and if you are using an analytics system like Tableau, maybe consider integrating them so that the data is connected. Another thing to keep in mind is zero tolerance towards new bad data. So until and unless the new data that you're entering into the system, until and unless you have set up a process to make sure that the fresh data is not again inconsistent, is not again of bad quality, you will never really reach a point where you have avoided these data related risks. So while you clean up your existing data that needs cleaning up, you have to also make sure that the new data, that you have set something in place that doesn't create new bad data. And then, of course, when it comes to data privacy, the most important thing is to make sure that only people who need access to the kind of information that you have put into your system have access to that. So really sit down and think the different profiles of your users and what is the data that these different profiles need access to. I think when it comes to data privacy, there's a lot that organizations probably need to learn about, and we are also still learning. We know that Europe has put GDPR in place. It has often created a lot of conversation. In India, we don't really have a law like that in place. We do have PDP bill in the parliament. I don't think it has yet been legal. It hasn't been made mandatory for organizations to comply with that. PDP is, I think, personal data protection bill. It hasn't been passed yet, but organizations don't have to wait for a bill to be passed. Especially nonprofits, they probably deal with a lot of sensitive data. So I think it's high time that they maybe already start having organizational policies and make sure that data privacy is taken care of, especially personally identifiable information. Excuse me. These things, that's really sensitive information. And a lot of organizations still use paper. They still use Excel to track these personal identifiable information. So very important to start considering safer mechanisms to holding all of that. Beyond that, I think other things is making sure that your functional process is consistent. One thing that I have personally noticed or observed with a couple of our organizations and clients that we have worked with is oftentimes two different teams are talking differently about the same kind of data. And I think that kind of inconsistency is really not going to be helpful. So you have to make sure that your business logic or your functional logic is what all of your different staff members understand in the same way. Maybe if I think of a simple example, like even the term beneficiary, although that's not a popular term anymore, but just for the sake of example, if you're using the term beneficiary, what does it mean to your different team members? Does your programs team interpret it as the community members they are helping, and maybe your marketing team interprets it as community members they want to help, or do they all use it in the same manner? So I think it's important to sort of have consistency in the different terms that you're using. And by the way, just a side note on that, just a fun fact on that. Beneficiary, like I said, is not a very popular word. And one of the organizations that we have recently spoken to, they have started using the word rights holder instead, because you're not really benefiting the community, right? It is their right. So that was really interesting and something that I really like. But yeah, coming back to your question, I think those are some important things. And maybe one last thing that comes to mind is continuous improvement. Make sure that the way your operations work, you are constantly adopting what data means, you're constantly cleaning it, and you are not just leaving it after setting the initial process or strategy. So yeah, these are some maybe recommendations to keep in mind as you think of mitigating these risks.
Thank you for that, Sham. I think that was very, very helpful. And, I could sort of, I can echo some of the things that you said, because even in our experience, we often find that nonprofits, they often don't have sufficient data validation process in place. And there's often, as you said, inconsistencies between the way different teams interpret the meanings of certain parameters and even the data that they track. So that's where, a lot of their data quality issues often stem from. So we often, recommend them to address these first before moving on to, a tech solution. So, one of the reasons why organizations want to adopt tech solutions, or even funders sort of promote adoption of tech solutions, is for their need to access accurate data, at their fingertips. And in general, the sector could also benefit from more transparency, especially in terms of the sort of program impact that is generated by organizations. So my question is, Shama, would adoption of tech solutions necessarily mean greater transparency and accountability of an organization's impact?
That is really going to depend on the solution that is being implemented. It is definitely possible. You could definitely use technology to your advantage, and you could bring data together, which in turn will help you with accountability and transparency. I think a very good example of that is what Vera Solutions has done with AMP Impact, which is our impact measurement solution on Salesforce. That has been built in such a way that the core aspects of portfolio management and impact management, all of that can be managed and tracked in one place. So of course, depending on how you are implementing a solution, you can actually do that. It is definitely feasible. It could also go into the other direction. You could end up installing or implementing technology in such a way that it's creating more silos. And I think as an example, most organizations have different teams. They all have very specific information that they operate with, and data ends up being stored in different silos. They overlap, but they are inconsistent. So that leads to errors, it leads to duplicate records, it leads to difficulty in accessing the right data when it's necessary. So really, what you have to keep in mind is what is the tool that you're using and how are you really implementing it. And another thing to keep in mind is once you have found the right tool for you, just tracking data, of course, is not sufficient. You also, again, you have to keep updating your data management practices, your data transparency practices for that matter. One word that has been very common or often heard of these days is data democratization. And I think that's one way that organizations can really give access to more end users to manage their data, which usually has been difficult because data is often stored in silos. I think simple examples would be sort of showing respect for your donors' wishes and asking them their preferred method of communication, for example. Or maybe if you are a membership organization, then maybe have a software that lets your members update their own profile. So there has to be ways where you're letting end users interact with your data as well. And again, the last thing around this is, again, if you have the right tech in place, a lot will also depend on how your team is handling the data. So if we follow the philosophy of garbage in, garbage out, if the data that you're not entering, the data that you're entering is not accurate, then the information that you get out of it will not help with your accountability or transparency issues. So all this to say that yes, definitely technology can help with it, but the steps is not just like finding a tech tool and implementing it. There's a lot around it that has to be done by the organization, by the leadership, to make sure that it's implemented in such a way that you are able to address, you are able to make your organization accountable, and you are capturing information that also makes you transparent.
That makes sense, Shama. And I think, especially continuing from one of the points that you said, it is quite important that you involve all the sort of team members from your organization in the whole data management process and journey. Unless they feel like they are a stakeholder in this process, it will always feel like this is an extra forced responsibility that has been added, and they may not view the benefit that the data generation can do for their program, their organization, the communities that they work with. So that is definitely something that we always recommend that they think of. And while a tech solution, as you said, it can offer a lot of functionalities, features. It can enable you to sort of track data on a monthly, weekly, daily basis, even on a real-time basis. But the analysis that it shows you is based on the quality of data that is fed to the system. So as you said, garbage in, garbage out. And what we often see, what we often feel is that ultimately, to bring reform in the sector, what could be beneficial is a blend of both tech adoption and mindset change towards greater transparency and accountability within organizations.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it all boils down to change management. I know I've said that way too many times now, but really it's all in how you decide going about with that change, and how you sort of make sure that your end user, your functional process, your technology, everything has been taken into consideration as you sort of go on that journey.
Definitely. So, Shah, we've discussed the the advantages and even the limitations that tech solutions can have, the sort of factors that organizations should consider while choosing a solution, the risks and challenges that they should keep in mind and think of addressing. And while the improvement in data management process efficiency is definitely a key benefit of adopting tech solutions. My final question is, what is the role of tech solutions in establishing program sustainability and long-term impact?
Yeah, so tech definitely will play a crucial role. But before we get into that, what I want to point out is tech will not be the only key role over there. I think technology is just one part of a much broader effort. So subject matter experts across private sector, public sector, and non-governmental organizations, they're all involved. And tech would be an essential ingredient to establishing sustainability and impact, but not the only ingredient. And then speaking of the role that tech will play, again, that depends on what solution are we looking at, right? A good use of technology definitely can save time for program staff. It can improve the efficiency. It can help you get better insight of your programs and decide how to make your programs more effective. In a lot of cases and a lot of organizations that we have worked with, it helps improve your donor reporting. So once you have the right kind of data, and I think it makes sense that you would want to understand the impact that your program is making in order to get more funding. And I think technology can help you with that. Once you have the right data place and structure, you can sort of understand the story of your impact. And of course, reporting becomes more powerful, more easier. And you can then in turn get more funding because now you're able to like show the impact that your organization is making. It can also help you understand your risks and challenges. It can also help you understand your different relationships. So even a simple CRM system, you can actually track the different kinds of interactions you have. You can track the history of your engagement with all of your different stakeholders. And at the end of the day, once you have the data right in place, it will help you make the right data-driven decisions. So I think the end goal that we all have when we are implementing a solution is give me the answers to the questions that I'm asking in my meetings, where we are all sitting together and deciding what have we done right, what have we done wrong, what has to change, what has to improve. And all of this, to answer all of these questions, you are going to really need solid proof, or you're going to need data, solid data. And that is what technology can eventually help you with. It can help you manage your data in such a way that you're able to pull the information that you need to answer your most critical questions.
Great. Thank you. Thank you so much for that, Shama. And thank you so much for joining us today. It has been wonderful to have you with us on behalf of Vera Solutions over the course of these sessions. And during this three-part series, we've tried to explore the answers to some of the most common and challenging questions that organizations in the sector face today when it comes to tech adoption. And you've offered us a lot of valuable and practical insights and recommendations that can be utilized by all organizations in the sector. Thank you so much, Shama.
Yeah, thanks a lot for having me, and thank you for actually conducting this and sharing this with a broader group of nonprofit community. And I think I also learn a lot from this community, so definitely honored to be able to share a little bit from our experience at Vera.
Great, thank you, Shama.